Also sitting here, looking at the guy in the orange shirt who was spinning around in his chair, wondering what this guy was thinking about. Looking through the door that separates them from the outside world, Ji-hun wants to know if this is the person who understands Seyeong. Opening the old door and stepping out, Han Ji-hun alone could only hear his own footsteps echoing in the cold hallway. Looking around, he wondered if he had been here for a while, but he didn't know where specifically, maybe the subway or something. No matter how I looked, I couldn't see the name of this place. It had probably been abandoned for a long time and apparently had never been used before. He sat down and looked at the train tracks below, thinking, why didn't I know there was something like this under the ground in Seoul? While studying the terrain, I suddenly heard Maruchi's voice say, like there was something interesting. Look at the guy at the front door. What did he say that now is the time for you to calm down? Han Ji-hun turned around curiously, then walked up behind Maruchi, looking at the door in front of him. It looked completely normal until he heard a violent bang as if someone was banging on the door. From then on, it opened, and inside was filled with smoke fading around Seyeong's clenched hand. Just seeing that made Han Ji-hun unbearable. Because standing in front of him now was Seyeong's muscular back after he slammed into the opposite stone wall. He looked dirty, ready to use another fist on the wall in front of him, but Maruchi kept calmly talking to the young man. It's a bit hard for me to believe you're doing this. This bunker is deep underground so you can't destroy it. Seyeong turned to look at him with disinterested eyes, but the other person didn't pay any attention and continued to ask, you really don't need a sword, right? So why do you carry it everywhere? See Seyeong glance across the tense room until she sees the lightning rod standing in the corner. Mauchi smirked and asked, what's the matter? Do you think I sold your sword on the black market or something? Not hearing what Seyeong said, he continued to ask, could you calm down a bit? Can we talk now? Seeing Seyeong's eyes staring at him even though he didn't answer, it seemed like an implicit agreement, so Maruchi rearranged his words a bit before speaking. At that time, I also felt extremely angry. Ji-hun didn't understand why he started talking like that, but Maruchi's voice kept ringing. Surely you understand what I'm saying? The source of this power comes from extreme anger. Things like calm down or taking it slow or just empty words. Seyeong did not object, but he knew Maruchi was right, because the words the other man said were still imprinted in his mind. Only hatred to the extreme can leave the mountains and seas, and only souls with the will to fight without stopping can receive the blessings of the sword. Looking at Maruchi tilting his head and explaining, the angrier he gets, the more dangerous it is for himself. To overcome everything one by one, I don't want to make you angry. Looking at Maruchi and then at Seyeong, Han Ji-hun really didn't understand what he just said because he heard the same old words, while he could be sure that Seyeong had only appeared a week ago. Where? I tried to control my desire to kill, but with each passing day it only got worse. Seyeong was still listening, so he continued talking. I couldn't control it anymore no matter how hard I tried. The problem was that the anger spreading through my body was about to disappear. Already, Seyeong was staring at him as if trying to find the conclusion of what Mauchi had just said, but he suddenly changed the subject. Tell me that I have a younger brother. If he wakes up, he will become a monster stronger than me, because he is completely different from me. Do you guys with powers like to talk nonsense or something? Han Ji-hun picked up every sentence in Mauchi's words and felt shocked. It seems like Seyeong also has the same thought. Is he saying that there are other people like him? As if he was speaking for himself alone, Mauchi continued to affirm that the boy was definitely still in the country. Seyeong began to vaguely feel that it had something to do with her. Sure enough, Mauchi said the following sentence. If you keep running around like that, the monster inside my brother will wake up. Do you believe me? Not understanding anything, Seyeong concluded. I only do what I need to do, no matter who messes with me. It was still an unchanged assertion that made Mauchi angrily scream, that's enough. Do you think I'm afraid of you or something? I just want my younger brother to live a normal life. Why? Because he loves the people in this country very much and I care about him very much. Up until now, I never told you not to kill the people you want revenge on because it has nothing to do with me. Now go find the person you want to kill and end all this. Over there, Ji-hun wanted to scream to express his opinion. I thought he said that to stop Seyeong from taking revenge. As soon as he saw him stand up straight, Mauchi's hand moved immediately. Instead of a warning, if you don't agree with what I say, then we'll have to fight again. The next day, in Seoul, there was an extremely shocking press conference. In front of a group of reporters flashing cameras, 5 men were kneeling with extremely apologetic looks. First is Lee Soo-yeon's father, representative of Shinjin Group, including the blonde man Kim Sang-pil from Bao and Egis Group. Jo Jin's father, general director of Good Fight Group, kneeling next to him. And the fourth person is Nam Ji-jung, deputy director of the tax department, plus Lee Soo-ho's father to make 5 superhero brothers. Representing all 5 people, Du Jang began to speak. Since reading the news that the victims died on Myeong Street, it always makes me cry. The story of the recent innocent military campaign did not care about the safety of residents in the city. This tragedy is all because they used the most terrible weapon that can kill people. White phosphorus was banned a long time ago. We are deeply saddened by the pain of losing our children. And above all, we will do everything we can to compensate the victims and their families. Suddenly a female reporter in the row below raised her hand and asked, why do the directors and related people want to appear to compensate others? Shouldn't the people who run Seoul be responsible for the incidents involving Seyeong and the use of white phosphorus? Let me explain this in more detail. This is all our fault. Seyeong became a serial killer after killing our children and became a terrorist. It was also caused by children who didn't understand our situation at the age of 14 to 15, clutching their chests like they were in great pain. His voice trembled. Now he's dead and no one even comes to lay a wreath, making me repent because I can't be responsible for the children's actions. He cried 2 tears and shouted, because we are the parents, I think I need to take responsibility for this. All this has affected the safety of the city's citizens. Seriously affected. That weapon exploded right in the center of the city, causing heavy casualties. The more Jo Jang talked, the more miserable he became. If I can atone for my sins with my own death, then at least the things that Seyeong did can be accepted, because after all, there is no other way. How can we control Seyeong who has occupied this city of Seoul? Bending down in pain, Jo Jang sobbed, we made mistakes in raising our children, so it's not really Seyeong's fault, it's because we taught our children the wrong way. Keeping her mouth filled with the salty taste of tears, a smile spread across her lips as Jo Jang concluded, we have a great responsibility in this. Sitting alone in her large office, Lee Jo Jang kept thinking about what happened during the press conference. Suddenly, he heard a knock on the door from outside and then heard the secretary's voice, announcing that Mr. Yoon Yun-suk from the Nan Financial Fund was coming to find him. I think he came here after watching the press conference broadcast on television. Jo Jang immediately told him to come in. As soon as the door opened, the bald man rushed to hug Jo Jang and sobbed until he was shaking. Not understanding anything, the old chairman still asked, where have you been? Why didn't you call me? While crying and sobbing, Yun-suk could only say one sentence. Son Da-hun, I'm dead. Jo Jang listened silently as he continued, Sung Shul said he would protect my family by evacuating to the military area and then Seyeong killed him there. Instead of comforting Yun-suk, Jo Jang slowly touched his face and said to him, I think there's something wrong. You misunderstood here. Looking up in bewilderment, Jo Jang said, I have a lot of things to tell you, so let me explain what made you misunderstand. The news station reported that day that Seoul is currently under government control, but their operations are still extremely chaotic. The departments responsible for handling the current situation are still showing their helplessness and incompetence. In front of the people, they don't know where to start or where to go. On the other hand, bereaved families such as Shinjin Group lost their children due to Seyeong's murder. Held a press conference to lead people to rebuild public facilities and compensate the bereaved families of victims who died in the white phosphorus incident. This sent a message to bereaved families like General Director Lee Jo Jang, that they are always there to support and encourage the country to develop even though they have lost their beloved child. Shi Yeon listened and turned to the key on her finger, filled with frustration. That sounds really funny, right? She wondered where Seyeong was. Still without an answer, the girl stood up and walked slowly through the hallway with a relaxed look. Suddenly, in a nearby room, a man's slow voice rang out. The supply of white phosphorus was actually brought by Kim Sang-pil of Egis Corporation. She immediately curiously turned her head towards the direction of the voice and heard the person continue to say that the fund that operates this weapon is funded by Shinjin Corporation and Goodfield. Standing in front of the surveillance screen, he reaffirmed that the information he had just reported was well-founded. I have compared the transactions and the recordings they have on my computer. Now I will send them to you to see immediately. Dean didn't turn around and thanked him for his hard work while both of them had no idea that Shi Yian had heard everything from the outside. She flipped the USB in her hand and laughed happily, then held it tightly with a bright smile. Something interesting was about to happen. The next day, the crematorium of the Myeongdong Street Church was crowded with people wearing funeral clothes, mourning their relatives who died tragically in the white phosphorus incident. The sound of crying echoed throughout the sky, and there were also whimpers when Zhou Jiang walked over to ask about everyone's situation. Not even a few sentences later, he heard the sound of wheels waiting to arrive, making him extremely wary and glanced over. On the main road, a black government convoy just stopped, and from there stepped out the familiar face of Lee Junhop. The current prime minister along with a few government people approached with faces that clearly did not want to be here at all. Zhou Jiang led Shinjin's group and asked, "What are you doing here?" Junhop, confused and not knowing what to say, immediately took a rock and threw it directly at the forehead of the angry crowd, screaming at them to go away. "Who do you think you are? Get out of here, no one here wants to see your faces." The parents and relatives of the deceased angrily criticized and threw stones at the government people, cursing them as bandits. "Your government is the one who ordered the attack with white phosphorus. Do you guys just consider us as objects?" As for murder, curses rose up all the time in the entire area around the church. Everyone cursed the government's people to die, causing the public's anger to rise more and more. Lee Junhop looked over at his subordinates and whispered, "Sir, please look at this." At that moment, he realized that his phone had just made a ringing sound, and Zhou Jiang also quickly realized that everyone present had a ringing phone. Full of curiosity, he took out his phone to look, not knowing what he saw but his face showing such horror. As it turned out, the message sent to everyone simultaneously contained the ugly truth about the white phosphorus attack along with compensation and donations. In just a few short seconds, everyone present could see the link back to the content of Lee Zhou Jiang, Kim Sang-pyo and Kim Jun-koo talking to each other that day before the wedding. They ordered white phosphorus shells to be dropped below. Every sentence and every word that rang out on someone's speakerphone showed that they wanted to throw white phosphorus from the beginning, even though they knew it would cause mass casualties. The sound was so clear that Zhou Jiang himself could hardly believe that he had been recorded from the beginning. When all three of them turned around, they were faced with all the hatred offered in the air by his relatives. Family. At first, he was hesitant for a few sentences. Then Zhou Jiang shouted loudly, asking everyone to calm down. This was someone's intention. This video was fake. Before he could finish his sentence, he was hit in the head with a phone in pain, causing him to fall to the ground. The whole group of people immediately became the target of attack from the bereaved families. They cursed to their faces, causing a group leader like Zhou Jiang to panic and be unable to speak. Kim Sang-pil seemed more resilient, only feeling troubled when these people found out the truth. Following his orders, Egis security immediately rushed forward with their uniforms, forming a horizontal line of more than a dozen people to separate the angry crowd from the general managers behind. After the group of people realized how they had been deceived, they immediately ran over, wanting to live and kill the president. Unable to stay here any longer, Kim Sang-pil called Zhou Jiang to come with him and quickly get out of here while the Egis security guards could still protect him. Behind them are still long curses chasing after the pain of the victims' families. Where are you running to? You guys aren't human, right? You bastards. Finally, the rich guys were able to get in the car and leave the crowd, but the stingiest thing was Zhou Jiang's hand, which kept squeezing tightly along with the dull pain from above from being thrown at them by the phone earlier. After Lee Zhou Jiang's recording was released, he held another press conference with the heads of corporations to reaffirm what he wanted to say to everyone. Also the press. First, the recording was clearly edited according to the sender's wishes. Second, the reason for them to create that illegal recording is currently unknown. Third, the identity of the person who posted that recording is currently unknown. Finally, he concluded that whoever posted the recording would definitely be sued by Joe Jang for spreading false information and defaming his reputation. And he also expressed that, although he was traumatized after the assault by angry people at the funeral, he said he considered the grief of losing a family member and will give leniency to the person who sent the recording if the reason for posting the recording is reasonable. Joe Jang clearly stated his opinion that the person should reveal himself and cooperate with the investigation. After that press conference, Dean scolded Seyeong to her face. "Why did you do this without my permission?" The girl hunched her shoulders and shrunk her neck for a moment, then mumbled, "Those bastards did this," and blamed it all on Seyeong, but that reason didn't convince Dean. He angrily asked again, "Is that why you took my files without permission?" Never seen Dean so angry. Seyeong softly wanted to explain, "What I did was wrong, but why did you want to hide that file even though it could clearly expose their secret? In general, I don't understand what his intention is." Dean turned back and asked her what my plan was. No need to listen to Seyeong's answer. He let out a tired breath. "We considered you a member of the family, but it seems like you don't see it that way, so you're suspicious of us. You're the only one who thought of using us as tools to avenge your own revenge." Seyeong panicked and explained that, "No, Dean, I didn't want things to happen that way," but he interrupted. "Everyone has a scar in their heart from participating in this organization. Of course we work together for the sake of each individual's personal hatred, so that we won't have to experience the sadness we once had again." Turning back to look at the young girl behind him questioningly, he reminded her that our purpose is to create a fresh new world. Seyeong tightened her grip on her shirt, trembling, and bowed her face with a guilty look, repeatedly asking for his forgiveness. "I didn't mean to do that." Her tears flowed in 2 lines and then patted onto the floor, expressing her terrible guilt. After being upset for a while, Dean's anger finally subsided. He said, "Go away, I don't want to talk to you in the near future or I will feel extremely hurt." The door to the surveillance room opened, leaving Seyeong alone, crying as she stumbled out, but within a few seconds her tears stopped flowing. When I looked up, I saw that there wasn't a single drop of water, so I clicked my tongue in disgust and walked back to my room, whistling. Kang Yun was then called to hear about Seyeong posting the recording on social networks. He commented that this was not part of our plan, but the result was exactly as he predicted. Dean felt the same way. Obviously there was an element of luck here, but it seemed like our plan was moving faster than expected. Kang Yun continued asking, "Are you saying that you knew Seyeong would take that file anyway?" Neither denying nor confirming, Dean said it was a good plan anyway, but the most important thing now is, are you prepared? Kang Yun didn't ask again, just nodded firmly and said yes. "What I'm doing has been handled without anyone knowing." Remind once again to the young man standing behind me, "Remember that our opponent is the greenhouse." Since Seyeong and I were completely exposed, everything needed to be thought through carefully, especially that government became more and more corrupt after Jang Sung-chul died. We don't need to be wary of what they do, just use our own weapons slowly and proceed according to the planned plan. Kang Yun lowered his head and promised himself that he would make sure of it and check and recheck to make sure there were no errors. After a moment of silence, Dean spoke up, "If I can win Jang Jonghu's trust after this, our plan will be much faster than expected." While all the forces were thinking about the most convenient way to do it, Seyeong, with her thick, tattered pants showing half of her buttocks, kept staring at the wall in front of her eyes while using her body sense to move her lightning sword. "Come close." The sword was so big that he controlled it very skillfully, creating horizontal and vertical cuts in his hair. Gradually, the long hair like a forest man fell to the ground, and a moment later appeared in front of the 2 men with a completely different appearance. Maruchi smiled. It seemed like he was already prepared, but his clothes also seemed to be just right. Han Ji-hun felt gay, so he didn't bother to say it. Only Maruchi kept joking around freely, and it seems like he likes tight clothes like this. At the age of 18, Seyeong didn't care about his personal appearance. He simply explained to him that there was nothing here for me to wear other than this outfit, so it was so tight. Finishing with the costumes, the three of them walked out the door where Maruchi introduced everyone to the beautiful thing here that would take us out. Seyeong didn't say a word, just glanced at Han Ji-hun, making 3 dots all over his head. Is that beautiful thing he said was an old machine built during the Napoleonic era? Seeing that Maruchi was indeed walking in that direction, the pilot was speechless. Isn't that a manual car? While walking up there, Han Ji-hun was still suspicious. Was this old-fashioned thing? As soon as I stepped on it, I heard a strange squeaking sound. Turning to face the other 2 people, I saw 2 men standing in 2 corners. No one said a word and no one started. It wasn't until Seyeong glanced at the pilot and Maruchi as if he didn't know the other 2 existed that he realized something was wrong. A moment later, Ji-hun felt that he was wrong. As soon as he made the car move, he cursed the 2 damn bastards. It turned blue. While sweating profusely and using all his arms and back muscles to control the car by hand, Ji-hun cursed at the 2 bastards in front of him to get the motivation to use all his strength to drive the car. If these 2 guys were willing to do it, just move a finger and this car would fly like crazy. Who would let me work hard like a worker digging a well? The wheel rubbed against the rails that had not been used for a long time, making squeaking sounds that stretched Ji-hun's strength to the limit. He breathed in and out, trying to use all his muscles, until he reached his destination and looked like a shriveled corpse lying on his back on the floor. Maruchi didn't even bother to ask a single question, just like, bye-bye, we'll meet again someday. And then Seyeong didn't say anything, leaving the pilot to breathe in boredom, then sat up and wiped his sweat, lying down to contemplate. Take a few more breaths. Ji-hun saw Seyeong walk straight towards the old door and said, I'll go up. He also followed with his face drained of energy, but Seyeong didn't pay any attention. Their eyes kept looking up until they reached the outside and discovered that the gate leading down was covered with grass as if no one had used this path for decades, and in front of them was an extremely strange and identical landscape. A farm that makes them wonder, where are we? The 2 of them walked silently through the fields that were cultivated very neatly. Seyeong took 1 step like Han Ji-hun took 2 steps because his legs couldn't keep up with that big body. It took a while. The new pilot hesitantly asked, so what are you going to do now? Seyeong's mind now has countless things to think about, especially after the words Mauchi said to him in the tunnel. No matter how you overturned and left soul in flames, people won't change. Human nature is not that easy to change. They also have to know how big a mistake they have made to think about correcting it or not. So instead of wasting time doing something like that, let's save the girl who is being used like a tool from the guys who want to set up this and that government. Glancing at Seyeong, he asked the important question, isn't she very valuable to you? Hearing that part, Seyeong's steps suddenly stopped, making Ji-hun startled and alert. He said what he said was so right that the pilot didn't understand how true it was. He frowned and looked back with wonder. Seyeong turned back and replied, I thought about stopping everything here. Ji-hun asked in a trembling voice, is that true? Is that true? Immediately I saw the other head firmly affirming that he did not want to create a happy look for Seyeong to see, but actually his heart was blooming, feeling like he could turn into an angel and fly to the sky. Him stopping these killings means I'm free, right? Who would have thought that the angel's wings broke when he heard Seyeong announce from the helicopter, oh hello. The pilot asked in a trembling voice why he stopped from the helicopter. He didn't mean he was saying he would end everything. Ah, fists clenched, Seyeong's veins appeared in anger as he repeated once again, I'm thinking about ending it all after killing all their families. Why didn't you say that from the beginning? Han Ji-hun wants to cry so much, do you really want to kill people? What kind of ending is it, Dad? Am I the only one who thinks the ending is a different kind of ending? While thinking, he suddenly saw a farmer's semi-truck waiting next to him. Han Ji-hun froze and looked at him, but he also froze and looked at the tall, dirty-faced guy walking in front. Who else was there, besides Tak Seyeong, the famous murderer who is famous in the world at this time? Ji-hun wanted to sound friendly and said that we would appreciate it if you could take us both to the nearest military base. The wheel kicked up dust on the ground. The old man cried and replied clearly, I understand, making Ji-hun not know what to say. Looking at the old man who was crying like he was about to die, he tried to find words to change the current situation. What I mean is that maybe you misunderstood, but you're not a hostage. He was still crying and opened his mouth to repeat again. Obviously I understand, I will definitely not say that I saw both of you. Hearing what I said was true, Han Ji-hun was so speechless that he didn't know what to say. In the shaking trunk of the car, Seyeong sat alone, clutching the sword in contemplation. He had so many things to think about that his eyes fell on the sword in his hand. Looking at that, Seyeong muttered, "Why did you choose me? Is it to help me or is it to use me to stop a war?" There was no answer from the sword, so Seyeong would not know, but in the dark red death place he had been to, suddenly there were blurry sounds. There was an eye with something ridiculous coming out of the ground, and then suddenly that thing, making high pop sounds. The person looked like he was intentionally jumping out of the ground under his feet. Gradually, another eye and a set of teeth appeared underneath it, then gradually increased in number. Only the eyes and mouth full of sharp fangs stuck together to form a block of something, directing its gaze at someone similar to it. As humans are gradually rising from the ground. As soon as that person took full shape, the pile of slime was sucked back into the whole space, making strange, sounds like the wind blowing through. When the black thing had entered, it all fell on the guy's body. His white skin had long black streaks, and then suddenly his black hair turned white in just a split second. Once the Batman's head was covered in silver, that person stomped his foot on the ground and clearly saw that he looked very similar to a human, but it was very strange. In the middle of his chest and abdomen, there is a vertical pupil that is wide open, glaring forward. That person's face does not look like a complete human being, because it runs long black lines of all different sizes. When the left eye opened, it was clear that 3 yellow pupils were intertwined, while the other half of the face grew out of eyes and a mouth full of fangs. No matter how you looked at it, it didn't look like a human. Next, before he could finish, his shoulder blades grew 2 pairs of wings made from the slimy stuff from before, then pinched the pupils inside, flying away at a terrible speed. They jumped over each other to fly as if they were afraid of missing their chance. A few days later, netizens received news that the person who spread the tape on everyone's phone was finally present on social networks. That person explained why he had the original tape and sent it via text message to everyone who had a phone. Then he also mentioned the school bullying incident 3 years ago with Seyeong as the victim. That person also said that he had evidence to prove that his words were true and that the truth was deliberately hidden so that the public could not know, but only revealed in the case of the government or other agencies. The investigating officer can only protect his identity. Shi-Yian leisurely walked on her green shoes, silently thinking about the words the other person said on social networks. At the end of the correction, that person said he would appear himself with the evidence in hand. That name is Park Shi-Yian. For those who don't know, it's just an unfamiliar female name. But the phone was thrown to the ground by Zhou Zhang's extreme anger, proving that he knew who Park Shi-Yian was, and did not expect her to appear at this exact moment. In the greenhouse, after seeing Park Shi-Yian's online announcement, Jong-hoo also said he was angry and couldn't believe it. Without needing his subordinates to inform him, Jong-hoo also knew that Park Shi-Yian was currently on the list of people most wanted by organizations. Jong-hoo yelled angrily, who didn't know that, but it made his subordinates speechless and didn't know what to say, just because he was so angry after hearing that Park Shi-Yian would appear. Now orders must be given to use all means to contact Park Shi-Yian and ensure that I can see her at the greenhouse tomorrow. The person in the back immediately reminded him that once Park Shi-Yian's identity was revealed, all the other countries' agents would rush at her like moths and flames. There was even a report that the 100 people who previously tried to recruit Park Shi-Yian were completely wiped out by her. It seems like they had a huge fight to get more. Looking at Jong-hoo's scary face, the other person began to mumble that they would eventually try some safe way to control Seyeong, and once that happened, the defense line with Seoul's current defense will not be able to stop it. In his base, Dean is asking his subordinates, have they still not found out where the other two are? According to Kong Yun's report, there were no witnesses at the scene. We have tried many ways to examine the area below, where the helicopter landed, but there are too many ways to escape from there, so now because it's very difficult to track them. Dean just hummed lightly to let Kang Yun continue, although our unit has retreated so the situation is unclear. But it seems like those two fought to the end, so I really want to know the result. Who wins? After pondering for a while, Old Man Dean spoke up. They are nothing like normal people. No matter the specifics, which side wins or loses is not harmful to us. Kang Yun didn't understand what he was saying, so he wanted to ask again and saw the old man turn around and give his opinion that if he needed to choose someone to win, Maruchi would be a better choice than the unstable Tak Seyeong. His face was extremely scary as he concluded a sentence. If possible, it would be better for those two guys to die, making Kang Yun scared and not knowing what to say. Thinking about it again, his eyes widened and he couldn't understand because Maruchi was someone who had persistently contributed to the organization for so long. Did he think Tak Seyeong would also join the organization because of Park Shi-yeon? But if that's the case, why would Dean want them both dead? I would like to ask a few more questions to clarify my thoughts. Suddenly a man appeared at the door calling the president. His voice sounded calm. The greenhouse has already called us. Both of them couldn't expect the Blue House's call to be made at this time, so Kang Yun glanced over and saw him looking full of calculation for a moment and then ordered Corporal Park Shi-yeon to come here. That afternoon, in her private mansion, Yeon was watching the recording of the fight scene between the strange man and Tak Seyeong in downtown Seoul. Just seeing that person's face, he was trembling and unable to speak, because who could not know the person facing Tak Seyeong, but Yeon knew it very well. Who else could have that confident smile on his lips but Maruchi, but it was impossible for Maruchi to appear there. The old man trembled as if he had seen a ghost, wondering why it was like that, while the middle-aged man standing behind did not say a word. Having the same last name as the old man standing in front of him was Jang Yeon with a determined face, not saying a word from beginning to end, letting the old man in front of him calmly wonder, is he still alive? Having no answer, he watched the video of the fight over and over again, then finally seemed to accept the truth. The old man remained silent for a while like that until he realized the phone in his pocket was vibrating continuously. Taking it out, Yeon took a deep breath and put it to her ear, listening to the person on the other side report. It seems that Chung Young-sa appeared much earlier than we expected. Now we just need you to give the order. The other party also added. Uncle Shi-yeon has accepted the Blue House's request for protection. Already, hearing that name, Yeon immediately stopped. Why is there Park Shi-yeon at this hour? If I can hold her in my hands, I'm sure your side will make things go in the direction you want. At that moment, the other side said that the task of protecting Shi-yeon would be assigned to his side to carry out. So Yeon had to take this opportunity and decisively answer the other side. Please don't worry. He hung up the phone, glanced at the man behind him and said, we have a protection mission. Please secretly appoint participants and directly command. Don't mess up like those useless juniors, yours. Jang Eon didn't ask more, just wanted to know who he had to protect, but when he heard the name Baek Shi-yeon, he immediately found himself stopping for a moment. Knowing that he was out of shape, he regained his composure for a moment and then asked Yeon if he needed to mobilize his entire army. He looked like he was thinking a lot, then glanced at the middle-aged man and said, no, other than them, it's not time to show up yet. Bring a few experimental subjects like the head of the commercial department and the goons. The country you are managing comes here. Jang Eon nodded to receive the order immediately. Surprisingly, he called Yeon father while the old man's face did not change at all. What he was currently concerned about was just how to capture Shi-yeon in his heart. Only hand. The sky in Seoul that day was clear. The sunlight shone down on a group of luxury cars parked under Jang Eon's orders. The whole team divided into groups and went on different routes to reach their destination. From there, several vehicles moved according to his orders, but with such a large number of people deployed, there must have been people far away who grasped the situation. In an unremarkable apartment building, Julia with blue hair had just used binoculars to report to the Russian spies over there, who had already taken action. At another corner of the street, there was also someone secretly watching their actions. It was a Chinese spy. Wang Xiaowen whispered to the person on the other side of the walkie-talkie. They were on their way. Besides Russia and China, a man with long, narrow eyes from Japan also called out to the person next to him. Let's leave, because Satomari Satoshi needs to closely follow Yin Young's activities to report back to him. Your country. The car also took Jang Eon rushing through the capital's streets with his mind filled with thoughts. Quite a distance away is a military barracks near an abandoned subway station that Seyeong and Ji-hun hitchhiked to the farmer's uncle. As soon as he acted, he made a loud explosion, causing the soldiers there to panic and turn pale. He simply declared like this, I don't want anything from you guys, so if I don't want to die, then stand still. That's what he said, but it's clear that both of them came here to steal an army helicopter. Ji-hun was afraid that he would go crazy and kill people, but he didn't. After stopping the group of people from attacking him, Seyeong went to the helicopter. Hearing the pilot ask him where he wanted to go, back to Shinjin Group headquarters or something, he never expected the teenager to say, take me to the greenhouse, making Ji-hun so bored that he doesn't bother to say anything. Going to the greenhouse again? His face didn't look like he was joking at all, so Ji-hun couldn't help but sigh. He had no other choice. Finally, he controlled the helicopter to fly out of the army's range. The crowd just stood there watching. No one dared to attack or do anything. Suddenly one fine day he lost the helicopter. Never mind. The head of the US CIA also took different actions. First, the black director privately called Pone in to ask again if he was sure that they should not get involved in protecting Baek Shi-yeon. Once again with a smile on his face, Pone said no, so he was very curious. Everyone knows that Tak Se-young values Shi-yeon very much. Even so he still doesn't want us to get involved. Come in or what? Afraid people will keep worrying about it, Pone gently explained. We have Mr. Tak's relatives in our hands and we are protecting them, while Mr. Tak has clearly asked our government to protect the body. But, knowing that, he had to let Pone know that other organizations are ready to use force if necessary, while we are not taking any action at all, which is a bit strange. Twisting a lock of blue hair in his hand, Pone smiled. It was true that his words made people suspicious, so he calmly explained to him. In order for the relationship between our government and Mr. Tak to go one step further, there is something I need to request. He wants to hear it right away, but he did not expect that Pone would want to command Relly to protect the Korean government when he is around. There, you don't understand at all why you want General Chester Relly to protect the Korean government? Pone still smiled and replied, that's right, to put it bluntly here, he doesn't want to protect Baek Shi-yeon like everyone else is doing. We have to help the Korean government. The black man doesn't understand anything. Didn't you say that there is a deep problem between Mr. Tak and the Korean government? If we help the Korean government, the relationship between the US government and Mr. Tak will likely cause conflict. According to Pone, everything is simple. Currently the Korean government wants to protect Baek Shi-yeon. As long as Baek Shi-yeon is safe, we will consider our mission accomplished. The result is correct, but the formula is a bit wrong. He frowned and looked at Pone, who was smiling disgustingly. By doing so, we can restore diplomatic relations with the Korean government, while still being able to receive trust from Mr. Tak. On the surface, he helps the Korean government, but in reality, it is Mr. Tak who benefits. The most misleading thing here is that the person responsible is the Korean government. According to Jang Eon's orders, car number 1 will go towards Chungyun Street, while car number 2 will pass through the area near Ahyun Station and car number 3 will continue towards GD. Those 3 cars will separate in 3 different directions, while the 4th car will pass through the town hall square by going through the tunnel right in front of them. When entering the tunnel, the car made a sharp turn and coming down from there was Jang Eon with a very calm expression. This was the meeting point to pick up people, so he just came here to confirm the right person, then called the 2 of them into the car. In front of them were only Dean and Shi-yeon, who looked visibly restless. Right when the 3 of them were still standing hesitantly, the Japanese spies immediately informed each other that there was danger. Car number 4 was going through the tunnel and stopped. There were some unknown subjects who got on car number 4. We cannot identify the subjects on the car. By the time Satoshi knew about it, the car had already sped out of the tunnel at extremely high speed, as soon as it emerged from the tunnel. The 4 cars that had been divided into 4 routes before suddenly approached into a group like before, so that all the spies were not sure which car was the main car and which was the backup car. A group of spies heard an unpleasant creaking sound, then received a notice that Alpha 2 had missed its target. As they were about to chase, a few black planes approached without knowing it. Jang Eon's men all got out of the car and stared at the people inside, clearly having discovered the spies' plan, locking down all actions, not allowing them to continue pursuing. After cutting off a group, the 4 continued running on the highway. Dean sat behind and quietly asked, "Can we get past them safely?" Seeing Shi Yeon trembling in the backseat, Jang Eon said slowly, "We will escort you 2 to the greenhouse safely." Having said that, the small girl next to him was still shaking like she was in the cold winter, making Jang Eon think a lot. His eyes even caught the moment Shi Yeon reached out and grabbed Dean's shirt tightly. With a particularly unusual look of sadness and worry, the old man had to hold the girl's hand and comfort her not to worry too much, but it didn't seem to be very effective. Jang Eon saw everything, but he didn't say a word because at that moment a missile flew right in front of his eyes from somewhere. It was clearly launched from the front direction and aimed at the 4 people in the black car. But they weren't sure which one of the 5 planes was the real target, so they blew up the first one on the right. It burst into flames below, then was thrown up like in an action movie, thrown a few dozen meters away, rolled around a few more times until the car was crushed and stopped completely on the road, creating an extremely terrible noise. Although Shi Yeon was safely sitting in the car, she held her ears tightly, looking clearly scared. And Jang Eon himself found it hard to believe. These crazy guys, did they dare to use heavy weapons right in the center of the capital city? Don't they need to know what diplomatic relations are and want to start a war? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became that he wanted to kill everyone. Suddenly rushing over to the driver and clutching his outer jacket, Jang Eon scolded harshly, "What are you doing? Why don't you get over here quickly?" At this point, he stepped on the accelerator to separate the car from the support rig and rushed forward at the fastest speed possible. The 3 men gathered and clung to the car while Shi Yeon held her head and groaned as if she was enduring terrible pain. More surprisingly, in front of Jang Eon were 2 white cars that suddenly stopped in their tracks. The day before his car came within range, a series of men stepped down with triple action guns linked together, firing without any mercy at the approaching car. Under such a hail of bullets, the car could only endure for no more than 10 seconds, so Jang Eon quickly shouted at the driver and rushed straight through. Bullet holes began to appear on the hood of the car. Finally, they stepped on the gas and rushed through the crowd, successfully escaping the hail of bullets. Looking behind him, Jang Eon wondered where these guys had come from. He immediately knew that they wanted to fight, but this group dared to use heavy weapons right in the middle of the capital, proving that they didn't want anyone in the capital. Some of these cars are still alive. Immediately grabbing the walkie-talkie next to his hand, Jang Eon shouted at the other side, "We are passing through Yeongnam-dong intersection. This is an emergency. Request the aid team to depart immediately." As soon as they finished speaking, when they passed the intersection, they saw a white truck appear on the left side, running with all its might, and the target was none other than the car of Jang Eon's group. The driver clearly wants to ram the car in front of him, but in such an emergency situation, all lives depend on the driver. Along with Jang Eon's cursing, "If you want to get out of here, you have to see what is fate." Luckily, the car arrived just in time for the truck to hit the ass, causing the 4 people in the car to spin around, wanting to completely empty the vestibule. As soon as they turned to the left, they saw dozens of men armed with guns rushing down from the car. The driver turned the wheel quickly to avoid the group of people who had just gotten off and fired at them. Behind them was a series of bullets continuously chasing after them to kill Shi Yeon inside. 5 walkie-talkies on the table were continuously reporting news that Britain had detected moving towards the target. Japan was the first country to act. Their people were fighting. China is currently also trying to interfere. How do you want to continue to monitor? Kim Sang-pil waited for an order for a while but didn't get one. Then he turned around and asked Jo Jang behind him what we should do now. He didn't say anything. After a while, he finally spoke up. It still hadn't come. At some point, Sang-pil began to feel impatient. Ki-dong wanted to stand up and advise him first, but Jo Jang's words interrupted. Everything we prepared for this whole process was not just to kill that person named Tak Seyeong. The remaining 4 people in the room remained silent, not daring to argue, listening to him continue to say, I don't know how useless you guys are. In this case you have to try to endure. You have to endure this. Because if we can't stand it, we're just like useless governments. Looking at the men present in the room, Du Jang loudly told them that once Tak Seyeong died, everyone thought everything would end there. But just wait until the last minute, then we'll show up to blow everything up, his face full of grime, clenching his fists. Whether it's Baek Shi-yeon or Jang Jong-hoo anymore. All of them. I blew them all away. Agent Julia's ear suddenly rang out the trembling voice of her teammate. Isn't the person we need to follow in Korea only Tak Seyeong? She was shocked and didn't know what the other person was saying, because he didn't even understand who the group in front of him was. And why did they have abilities so different from ordinary people? Jang Eon gritted his teeth in anger when there was no way to get these 2 people to the greenhouse safely without knowing the girl sitting in the back seat was smiling silently. Currently, the car is surrounded by Egis security men, pointing weapons at them, ready to open fire at any time. Even without looking at binoculars, Kong Yun could know what was going on down there. His subordinates urgently asked him through the radio, the current situation has changed. Should we change the battle plan accordingly? No, but he didn't answer because he didn't know what to do. Everything seemed more dangerous than we initially thought. The important thing is that his current order will affect the immediate situation. After thinking for a while, Kong Yun decided to give the order to his subordinates. Suddenly, he heard a noise and immediately turned around, wondering who was down there. A group of people of average size but with torn and bloody bodies were walking step by step like zombies towards the front of the car that was currently everyone's target. They did not need to use weapons, even though in front of them was the Aegis security team firing continuously at the 4-seater car. The front windshield began to crack with cracking sounds, making Jang Eon see. Okay, if this continues, this bulletproof glass won't last. After shooting the first round, they replaced the magazine with a new one and approached the car while still pointing their guns at the people inside, ready to kill at any time. The situation now was hanging by a thread as there were heavy guns on all 4 sides ready to fire. One of them shouted, ordering everyone to quickly get off the bus. Shi-yeon glanced at that person with disgusted eyes. Before he could curse, he heard a loud explosion from behind, causing people to turn around and look. Aegis security also noticed something unusual. But no one understands what is going on. The people in the car turned their heads in confusion. Old Man Dean himself didn't know what the people approaching were. Only Jang Eon smiled with satisfaction. It was finally here, waiting. Forever glancing at the driver, he ordered that when we get the signal, we should immediately let the car start. What the Aegis crowd was focusing their eyes on were 6 figures coming out of the smoke. Everyone was bleeding profusely, some were torn, some were cut into their flesh but still standing. It's just that their faces don't look much like normal people, they all look like they're being controlled by a parasite. That strange style made the Aegis security guards startled and immediately received the order to open fire and opened fire continuously at them. Grabbing a soldier in the back bunker that he killed, one used his body as a shield for himself and then headed straight into the middle of the extremely burning storm of bullets. The 4 men split into left and right directions and rushed towards the Aegis soldiers at extremely fast speeds, enough to make people realize in horror that death was coming to them and scream but could not resist. From the car, Dean and Shi-yeon could see that the group of people could smash people with their bare hands very easily. The brown-haired girl's eyes became wild when she saw that scene, delighted to see the Aegis soldiers opening their mouths, screaming in fear, and firing their entire magazines at the strangers. It was clear that he had shot at them a figure that had suffered 2 or 3 bullet wounds without that person falling. Simply looking down at the bullet wounds on his body, like being bitten by a mosquito, that person turned around and stared at the soldier who had just shot him, causing him and the people around him to appear scared. The guy in the vest grabbed his face with his hand, twisted his neck 180 degrees, and tossed it aside like a broken toy. Then, before the remaining two teammates opened fire, the deformed brown-haired man jumped in front of them, used his two arms to grab the other two faces, quickly wiped them forward and threw them into the hands of the other two. In the Egis group, as soon as they grabbed it, they didn't understand what was happening when they saw the top of their head being grabbed tightly. Another guy wearing a suit rushed at them with lightning speed and smashed their heads together with a loud popping sound, killing them very easily. Just like that, they went straight into the Egis formation. Using only their bare hands, they were able to disable the security guards' weapons and kill them with just a few extremely simple, yet powerful movements. Extremely high size. The 6 superhero brothers continued to confront the stream of bullets rushing out from the security guards. From inside the car, Dean and Seyeong could see that the Egis side was completely at a loss. She naturally likes people with differences, so she didn't hide the joy on her face, while Dean felt extremely insecure. They are too dangerous. Until now the government has not yet had such outstanding power, so where did they come from that even he does not know the origin? The more Dean thought about it, the angrier he became that he clenched his fists. If it weren't for what happened today, he would never have known about the existence of this group. Jang Eon softly called the driver's name. When it was time to leave, he immediately turned the steering wheel and bypassed the group of people to escape the intersection where he had been blocked until now. Just after passing the car through another intersection, Jang Eon turned around and smiled at the two people behind. Now we can rest assured because the greenhouse is not far away. Yet no one expected that the wheel had just run over a mine that had been placed on the road for a long time. There was a loud explosion from below, throwing the car's hood up high. The people inside suffered an extremely terrible shaking when the car stuck its head on the ground, then flipped upside down, belly up to the sky, and slammed the left wheel down again. Everyone suffered a painful impact, but there were no fatal injuries. At that moment, everyone realized that there seemed to be someone waiting for them in front. A pair of expensive shiny leather shoes walked over, reading out the names Baek Shi-yeon and Tak Se-yeon as Kim Sang-pil was cursing. If you weren't born into this world, my little son Chang-soo wouldn't have died like that. Half an hour ago, in a meeting between Lee Jo-jang and his friends, he announced that after killing all those bastards, we will all leave this country. Hearing that the plan was very smooth, Kim Sang-pil had to speak up to interrupt. Perhaps Tak Se-yeon was still alive. Seeing the suspicious look on Jo-jang's face, he explained that being hit by so many white phosphorus bullets would normally cause part of his body to melt, but Tak Se-yeon is completely immune to that, so we haven't seen it yet. Are you sure that bastard was killed or not? Jo-jang knew he was right because Kim Sang-pil was the one who imported white phosphorus into the country. The problem was that he was now clenching his fists on the chair. Agreeing with Lee Jo-jang, if that bitch Baek Shi-yeon is killed, I must be the one to do it myself and bring her body to Tak Se-yeon who killed my son to see with my own eyes. Jo-jang did not object, so he arranged to take a car and leave the country first, leaving Kim Sang-pil alone to personally kill Baek Shi-yeon as he wished. But for some reason, everything had been planned in great detail, but he still felt like it was wrong, and it was hard to understand. The car stepped on a mine and exploded, causing the people inside to shake violently and then being hit a few times inside, which was just the beginning. Initially traumatizing the psychology of the people in the car, then leading them to unimaginable surprise when the leather shoes appeared with Kim Sang-pil full of hatred. Determined to kill Baek Shi-yeon, Kong Yun hid behind a nearby pillar wondering who they were. Right in front of the greenhouse was a large group of people waiting for the car to arrive. When they walked down with their uniforms on, he realized it was Kim Sang-pil of Egis. No matter why he appeared here at this time, it will clearly make things more difficult than ever. As soon as he landed, Kim Sang-pil ordered the entire Egis security team to go out and kill everyone in the car, so as soon as he saw the car coming, they fired continuously to puncture the bulletproof layer on the outside of the car. Dean had to push Shi-yeon's head down to avoid the bullets piercing the two people. The situation suddenly changed, and gaining the right to attack Shi-yeon like that made the Japanese agents very angry. Who were they to act so directly? Satoshi waved his hand and told everyone to quickly go protect Baek Shi-yeon. and Kong Yun behind the pillar also had his gun ready because no one here wanted Baek Shi-yeon to die. At that moment, he heard the sound of a car coming right from behind him. Several cars followed each other at extremely high speed, clearly not from his side. But Kong Yun knew they also had to ensure the safety of Baek Shi-yeon and Julia leading the group of Russian agents. Remind everyone, we have to protect her so we can control Tak Se-yeon. The first thing is to remove all obstacles, which is the group that is shooting at the car in front of them. Kim Sang-pil saw the white cars appear and immediately pulled out a high-end gun and declared, I have no grudges against you guys. I just need that bitch Shi-yeon to die. Having finished speaking, he fired his gun repeatedly towards the car, along with the rain of bullets, ensuring that the Egis were firing simultaneously towards the car. The car's exterior armor was riddled with holes and was starting to punch large and small holes inside the car, causing everyone to have to hide. Sang-pil knew that was so. He continuously fired his gun to put everyone to death, always screaming to die for me, but he did not expect that the helicopter above had dropped a huge body. Among so many people, that person chose the blonde head who was firing a gun at the car and questioned, Did you just say you wanted to kill someone? As soon as Sang-pil's eyes collided with Seyeong coming down from the sky, his hand grabbed the sword and decisively slashed him from top to bottom. Seeing blood pouring out of his body, it took 2 seconds for Sang-pil to realize that his hands holding the gun had been cut off. Shock seeped through his mouth. It took him 2 seconds before he gasped and roared at the terrible pain that was taking over him. Seeing the scene of Kim Sang-pil collapsing made everyone realize that the current situation had turned around in a way that no one could have expected. Everyone was shocked when they saw Tak Se-young's huge figure appear. Only Shi-yeon smiled as if she had predicted everything. She walked straight out of the car and lovingly called Seyeong, while he was still standing there, looking around to see if anyone else wanted to kill Shi-yeon. This fierce face and body were unmistakable. Satoshi lowered his body on the front terrace, wondering if he was still alive. If so, then we must protect Baek Shi-yeon at any cost. Who would have thought that from behind him, he could hear the sound of tutu ringing continuously. It seemed that everything was just starting now, because in his eyes, a rare horror was revealed. Next to him was Songkyu, who was breathing heavily, trying to endure the pain. But Seyeong did not intend to forgive him here and instead turned to call his name full of hatred. The blonde guy turned around and was about to curse Seyeong, but he met his scary eyes when questioning him. Let's try again. Who did you want to kill just now? Even though he was scared, his hatred was even greater. Sang-pil was in pain, sweating all over his face, still calling out both his full name and his full name, then cursing that he was a damn bastard. Knowing this was his last chance, he gritted his teeth and roared towards the Egis group. What are those idiots doing? Quickly kill this bastard for me. Unexpectedly, before I could finish my words, I heard the sound of helicopters approaching in extremely large numbers. The words U.S. military were clearly written on the fuselage of the aircraft, and there were not just one but many aircraft flying in, causing Kim Sang-pil to swallow those words back. The Americans informed everyone below to quickly put down their weapons and surrender. If they do not do so, we will consider this an act of terrorism and, according to the principles of the U.S.-Korea alliance, shoot them down. Right away, Sang-pil was so angry that he couldn't say a word. His ears kept hearing the sounds of the Americans above. If you accept to surrender, we will take you back to your country and receive investigation there. Seyeong didn't know why they appeared here at this time, but he didn't care much. While old man Kim Sang-pil was very angry, he only had a little more left to kill the bastard. There, at that moment, he looked up and somehow saw the brown-haired girl holding her head in her hands. She looked miserable, but she was clearly smiling like a devil in hell. Realizing that everything was within people's plans, Sang-pil bitterly called Tak Se-young and Baek Shi-yeon and roared, "You devils, you will all die." Although the person died, his neck was the first to fly out under Se-young's decisive sword. He didn't say much but came here to kill Changsu's parents, so today will be the day for Kim Sang-pil. He died. The old director's head flew up and fell loudly at the feet of the Egis crowd standing there. They looked straight and saw blood pouring out of the mouth of the person who paid them their salary, so they were shocked and had to hold back and not break the ball where it was lost. They huddled together silently looking at Seyeong, not daring to speak. His face was now ready to destroy the whole family. What did he say to the blonde director? Suddenly he looked up and saw a lonely helicopter coming towards him. It just landed straight in front of Seyeong along with the gate to the greenhouse. Whoever it was, they weren't on the same side as Egis, so they turned pale and looked over there. They didn't expect to see Ji-hun's face, confused, scratching his head and greeting everyone. At that time, Shi-yeon had not yet gotten out of the car and raised her hand to call him happily. Seyeong, it's me. Shaky. He looked at his friend who was waving warmly to welcome him, then without saying a word, he suddenly walked towards her with a face full of worry, but he just couldn't say it out loud. A smile bloomed on Shi-yeon's face, then she rushed forward to hug her friend, letting her forehead touch the hard abs, closing her eyes tightly, rubbing her brown hair against Seyeong's six-packs. She muttered, as expected he was still alive, so lucky. His face softened a bit when he answered her, but before he could confide, he heard Shi-yeon's voice asking a question without beginning or end. But what should I do, Seyeong? He frowned, looking at the girl hugging him, wondering what was going on. When Shi-yeon looked up, she saw her eyes were full of teachings. Those bastards' parents had already escaped abroad. They had boarded a special plane to fly abroad. Seyeong didn't ask about that but wanted to know why her friend was here. Letting go of Seyeong, she replied that our president was on his way to the greenhouse. Dean heard me mentioned and immediately got out of the car from the other side and asked in a low voice if he was okay. It's been a long time since we've seen each other, but Seyeong already didn't like this old man, so he gritted his teeth to keep from uttering bitter words and didn't greet him anymore. The Russian spies were in a deadlock, so they had to wait for Julia's instructions. She didn't turn around and just replied and waited a little longer, making her subordinates confused, but what can she do? Julia turned back to hold back her grumpiness. Once Tak Seyeong appeared, all plans and tactics were useless. She had seen it with her own eyes outside the secret military base, so she didn't dare to take the risk. When she saw the American fighter jets flying in the sky over Korea, she immediately realized whose plan this was, gritted her teeth and cursed that damn old fox. Knowing that there was nothing she could do in this situation, she turned around and called Eddie, "Help me hear what Tak Seyeong was saying." He agrees to start the tracking devices now. The entire actions of the Russian spies caught the eyes of those on a higher floor nearby. The Japanese side finds it very strange. They haven't done anything yet. Are they secretly plotting something else? Satoshi is also following the strategy of remaining calm. He wants to find out what the powers are talking about and then make a decision for his side. A subordinate proposed to retreat, but Satoshi did not agree even though they could be captured at any time. I know it's dangerous to stay, but if you think about the failure of the battle, don't expect to return to Japan intact. Satoshi angrily reminded his subordinates, if anything goes wrong, this is our last mission. In a building with a direct view of a man and woman hugging on the street was the low voice of a spy from the French intelligence agency. When we show up later, maybe everything will be over, we have to take the opportunity. Michelle looked at the fully armed subordinates behind her, reminding them that from now on we are mercenaries. Don't think that returning to our country is easy if we don't complete the mission. Service. Quite a distance from the greenhouse, where the first collision between the Chinese spies and Shi-yeon's escort group occurred. The radio kept calling their names waiting for a report there but no one answered. The Chinese commander, Jin Shin-keon, angrily cursed what was going on. There were Americans and Koreans here. Even Tak Seyeong was present, but it was unclear how business was going on the other side. The surrounding space was silent even when Shi-yeon hugged her friend. The normally aggressive gang had to pause their actions to listen to what they were saying to each other. In the sky, American fighter planes continuously urged, I repeat once again, the troops of all countries to lay down their weapons and surrender immediately. The Egis security team was confused, looking up in confusion as soon as someone put down their gun. The others immediately surrendered. The Russian spy side is very aware. Then the Japanese and Chinese sides because they are currently under the American side's observation. If they mess up now, they will be shot immediately. Seeing that all the forces before and after and around her had proactively surrendered, Seyeong's eyebrows were still tightened in alertness. The girl hugging him kept calling Seyeong. The person behind the phosphorus bombing was Lee Jo-jang. I was the one who posted the evidence online. He didn't say a word, just used his affectionate eyes to look at her who was smiling and talking happily. I did a good job, right? I couldn't just let them act so majestically and mischievously forever. Looking delighted after punishing those people, Seyeong suddenly remembered what Maruchi had told her. If she did that, things wouldn't change anything. So he opened his mouth and was about to say a few words to her, but suddenly Shi Yian released his large body and spoke first, because he was here so everything was so quiet. He remained silent while Shi Yian pretended to look around and then buried her face in his firm belly and whined. I was very scared, very afraid they wanted to kill me. People were shooting at each other like they were crazy. Everyone present knew how Shi Yian's every word had a strong impact on their lives, so she continued to talk steadily. They fired a missile warhead and artillery shell here just to target that car. Panic appeared more and more clearly on the faces of the spies everywhere. Shi Yian was emphasizing how many times I almost died. But when you were here, they were surprisingly quiet. Why do they always want to kill me? After speaking, the girl smiled brightly and asked Seyeong, will you avenge me? There was obvious amusement in her eyes when she asked him why he didn't kill them all. Shi Yian's eyes were half closed as her smile became more and more sinister. Can we just kill them all? The Egis group behind Seyeong did not dare to breathe, feeling their hearts stop beating when they saw Seyeong's scary face turn around and stare. Time at that moment seemed to have stopped. All around the world, only the sound of the airplane fan was continuously resounding, unable to cover up the fear of the spies as everyone strained their eyes to watch Sei's expression. Young, every breath he exhaled was enough to make them tremble and want to kneel to the ground. On that exact day, army wheels arrived from somewhere, and when we looked at them, we immediately recognized that they were not Korean vehicles but American vehicles. When the first car stopped, General Chester Lely hung on the door and waved at him enthusiastically. Hey Tak, we meet again. As soon as Jang Eon stepped out of the car, he stopped. Even Ji Hun had to squint to see who it was. And Shi Yian also wanted to know who could be so close to him. Seeing the teenager's face stiffen, Lely continued to wave and repeat that it was me. I was the one who translated for you at the Jongsan base. Looking at Seyeong's face as if she was trying to remember, the girl looked up and asked, do you know him? The other person came forward to explain himself. The US side gave instructions to find out information about Mr. Tak and his girlfriend and then try to help him. Apparently something happened to Mr. Tak's girlfriend, so they issued an emergency order to send a helicopter away. Shi Yian looked for a moment before realizing that Tak's girlfriend in what he said was himself. He didn't object, so he continued. I also have orders that I must wholeheartedly carry out your requests, so if you need anything just let me know. Our government is ready to break all boundaries to do whatever Mr. Tak wants. His eyes looked at the general teasingly, then he called Shi Yian in a low voice, turned around and asked her with obvious concern. Obviously, do you really have to go to the greenhouse? Looking at Shi Yian's lovely determined smile, Seyeong half knelt down to lower her eyesight, softly asking to let me take her away. Among the people here, Jang Eon is the one who doesn't want him to go to the greenhouse the most because if Tak Seyeong goes to the greenhouse again, his father and the other officers might all be killed. Shi Yian's eyes clearly showed that she did not expect her friend to suggest this. Stunned for a few seconds, she refused, causing Seyeong to immediately ask why. Stretching out her slender arms, she hugged Seyeong's neck and comforted him not to worry. I can take care of it myself. Just get on the plane and catch those mice running over there. Without looking, Shi Yian seemed to know that her friend was upset, so she said, after I finish my work, I will go home, and when you finish your work, you will go home too. Seyeong's throat only let out a very small hum, then Shi Yian raised her hand to wipe away the skin under her left eye and smiled happily. Last time we met, I was very worried because the dark circles under your eyes were too dark. Luckily, they have disappeared now. Finally, a smile appeared on Seyeong's face. He stood up straight and looked at the newly arrived American general. ordering him to help me take Shi-Yian to the greenhouse. Relly was stunned and asked in return, was that all? Suddenly I saw Seyeong looking around and saying she still had one more thing to do. His eyes stopped at Han Ji-hun, making him stupidly point at himself and quickly run away like a servant. I don't understand why so many people here keep remembering what I did. No matter how you look at it, Relly can see that Ji-hun looks like the puppy that Seyeong raised. He ran over to ask what was going on. He asked simply, "Can you fly a plane?" Han Ji-hun turned pale and roared as if he heard something broken. How can I fly a plane? A plane is completely different from a helicopter. So Seyeong turned to the general and said he needed both a plane and a pilot. Even though he didn't understand what was going on, he still agreed, making Ji-hun sigh and congratulate him. Congratulations to the general even though I don't know who he is. But he didn't stop for about 5 seconds when the thought flashed through his head. Ji-hun looked at the general with bewildered eyes and suggested that we should go by car. I will speed as fast as I can to get to Osan for you. Ji-hun secretly whispered in his heart. Tak Seyeong wanted to change to a plane. He already wanted to reach out to the world. When Seyeong passed by him, he thought to himself that he would become a pile of excess baggage that Tak Seyeong did not care about. Thinking of that, suddenly his big and strong thighs fell hard on the ground. Ji-hun felt like the light of heaven was finally paying attention to him. From this moment, Han Ji-hun, you are officially free. Without turning back to look at Seyeong getting into the car whose door was opened by Relly, he kept crying in joy until he heard Seyeong's small voice suddenly change his mind. I'll go there using the helicopter I used to get here earlier. Ji-hun's ears were suddenly sharper than a dog's, praying that the general would say something to change his mind, but unexpectedly he just said okay I understand, causing the light of heaven to shine above Ji-hun's head. Immediately turned off. He felt like his life force was being drained away, his tears of happiness had turned to immense suffering. After arranging his affairs, Relly went to a gray-haired and bearded company commander named Hever to tell him what Tak Seyeong's request was. He simply wanted to escort Baek Shi-Yian to the greenhouse but he had to ask again. The greenhouse is the residence of the Korean president. If we want to go there we must have permission from the government. Relly didn't think it was necessary. This was Mr. Tak's request and they had received orders from higher-ups to definitely complete his requests. So the two raised their hands to greet each other before leaving on duty. Please leave everything to Company Commander Hever. I will go with Mr. Tak to Osan. Looking at Ji-hun limply following Seyeong onto the helicopter, Shi-Yian finally called out his name and told him to come back safely. Looking at the gentle smile of the brown-haired girl, Seyeong finally had a rare smile on her face, promising her that she would return. Turning back with a cold face towards Ji-hun who was gritting his teeth and wanting to cry, he said let's go, then kept his body still on the plane's gear as it soared high. Seyeong and the original squad soared out of the asphalt road below. Waiting for him to begin to leave her sight, Shi-Yian whispered that you must definitely come back to me. Hanging on the helicopter piloted by Han Ji-hun, they heard information from the Korean side that there were 2 special planes flying abroad from Zimpo Airport, one to Osaka, Japan, the other to Beijing, China. In any case, Tak Seyeong will choose one of those 2 spots, so Chester Relly wants to know where he will go. Below the American transport vehicle following the helicopter piloted by a crying Han Ji-hun, everyone was waiting for Seyeong's decision on which direction to go. Thanks to closely following Seyeong's route, the Chinese spies in Seoul quickly reported back home that Tak Seyeong would go to Beijing first with the help of the U.S. military. He only had the option to report back to his home country and not be able to stop him, because his enemy had taken a special plane to flee abroad. Unfortunately, one of those 2 locations was the capital of China. The Japanese Cabinet Information Investigation Office was still sitting there waiting for news that day. Strangely, the phone on the director's desk rang. It was not a call from a spy but a strange voice from a person calling from a spy. Claiming to be Murata Sudo, reporting a high possibility that Tak Seyeong would come to Osaka, but no, he corrected himself, he would definitely go to Osaka. Before the director had time to understand why Seyeong came to Osaka, Murata warned him that he would absolutely not let Tak Seyeong enter our country. As for specific information, the spy agency would report back. The reason is very simple. Seyeong is a time bomb that can explode at any time. Even the Korean government can't help but watch him go off on his own. The reason Tak Seyeong came to Japan is because his enemy escaped from Korea to Japan. Until he finds those people, he will not stop. Even though he heard that the intelligence department had prepared a plan to deal with Seyeong, the other side still insisted that he consider it, because after seeing with my own eyes what Tak Seyeong did in Korea, I just feel that if he comes to our country, not only Osaka, but even Tokyo will be engulfed in flames. Whatever his decision is, he must give instructions quickly, because if Seyeong really comes to Japan, it will only take an hour to arrive. On the private jet of the three rich men, Yoon Yun-suk's trembling voice rang out, "Why do we have to go to a country close to Korea like Japan and not go to America?" Nam Yun sat next to him and glanced at him in frustration. America had supported Tak Seyeong. If we got there, we wouldn't have put our heads in the bag for a moment. Adding that idea, Jo Jang said, "I still have a hand in the Japanese cabinet, so don't worry." On another plane heading towards Beijing, China, Nam Ki-young's voice was heard asking, "Wouldn't it be better if we went with Lee Jo Jang to Japan? I've considered the worst-case scenario could happen." Sitting next to him was Kim Young-koo, director of Good Fint, who replied that if Japan asked them to return home for fear of threatening diplomatic relations, then we would be in even more danger. But China is far from paying attention to these diplomatic relations from Korea, and have you seen China ever pay attention to regulations or the attention of the international community? Another reason is that there are many places in China that can protect us, so these two men left to go to China. The American special plane picked up Seyeong and immediately took off into the sky towards Narita Airport. Up there, in addition to Seyeong and General Chester Raleigh, there was also Han Ji-hun crying next to him. Hearing that this transport plane had been granted permission to enter Japan, so that they could smoothly enter the land of the rising sun, he slid down on the seat without anyone paying attention. According to the current information that Raleigh has, Narita Airport is currently blocked. There are Tokyo Defense Forces, airport security forces and co-rap forces preparing themselves to fight. Seyeong just glanced at the general and quickly cut off the words, "They have nothing to do with me," causing his next sentence to hang on his lips. The silence that passed between the two made Ji-hun feel extremely funny. "I've already said that, Seyeong doesn't care about anyone. And there's one more thing Chester has to announce." After getting off the plane, his enemies immediately moved somewhere, showing off a computer recording from the camera. "We have tracked them down using drones and satellites, so they will not escape our hands," Chester said. As if knowing that Seyeong's eyes were full of doubt, Chester immediately added that there were Lee Jo Jang, Yoon Yun-suk and Nam Hee in this car, causing his eyes to suddenly become sharper. The American transport plane very quickly appeared on the airlift of Narita International Airport. Below the landing place were a crowd of people and vehicles waiting. Looking at the situation, we knew they were just waiting for the American transport plane to land. The fully armed Japanese army, led by members of the cabinet, has been waiting since the news of Seyeong's move here. The plane door opened and Han Ji-hun asked if he knew Japanese. He interrupted and told me to stay here, making my brother completely devastated. As soon as he stepped off the plane, Seyeong looked up and down, seeing a lot of people in front of him waiting for him, but he didn't say a word, even when the head of the cabinet welcomed him to Japan. He was stunned and raised his head to the side and then along with his soldiers looked back completely because Seyeong did not pay any attention to them, but just soared straight into the sky towards Osaka. It was the first time I witnessed a person being able to fly that high and fly that far. But the first thing that came to the head of my grandfather's head was the curse that he really didn't know any manners, coming to someone else's country. "How dare you act so disrespectfully?" Chester did not dare to comment, but Han Ji-hun breathed a sigh of relief. Luckily there was no fight. Tak Seyeong already said a friendly greeting. Jumping out of Narita Airport, he landed on the rooftop of a building in the inner city of Osaka, turned his eyes to the highway of this crowded city, and used his 5 more sensitive senses to follow. With the signal indicating the car of the three rich men, Seyeong seemed to have determined the location she wanted to go to. That convoy had a few more escorts next to it, along with a Japanese spy in charge. According to the information the driver got, Seyeong departed from the Korean airport and chased us all the way here. Lee Jo-jang's guards paused for a few seconds and then shouted loudly that the men sitting on the bench could not hear each other clearly. What the hell? That brat had just arrived at Narita. Why had he already come here? Jo-jang was surprised at first, thinking he said something wrong, but when Nam-hee turned around, he saw his face pale. A figure jumped forward not far from them, while Hee-yoon-huk was still there. Tremblingly asked, "What if that guy chases me here? We have to change the battle plan according to the current situation." They are still planning to divide into 3 escort teams to act but haven't finished arguing yet. The driver pointed at the shadow walking ahead. Jo-jang was the second person to spot it. That person immediately laughed and cried. His face was covered in sweat as if he had a fever, wondering, "Oh my god, what's going on?" God? Following Jo-jang's gaze, the driver turned back and discovered that the dark shadow was none other than Seyeong, who blocked them with his prepared fist.